Hi there, Mike here. This video is an updated Bazzite installer guide. Bazzite has released a new Live ISO and the installation is completely different. Fortunately, the installation process is now significantly simpler. Before we start though, back up anything important. While things don't usually go wrong when installing a new operating system, it's still a good idea. If you have anything important on your machine, be sure to back it up before continuing. Make sure you have the following available before you start. You need a fast USB 3 or better flash drive of at least 16 GB. An SSD drive or better for your Bazzite install. Bazzite does not run well on a spinning hard disk drive. A keyboard and mouse. At least 64 gigs of free space that you can give to Bazzite. Now in your BIOS, make sure that you've done the following. Turn off fast boot. Change SATA mode to AHCI if it's set to RAID or RST. This isn't a common setting on modern machines, but it can prevent your drive from being visible when installing Bazzite. Unfortunately, if the setting is set to RAID or RST, you'll need to reinstall Windows. Note that in most cases, you don't need to turn Secure Boot off to install Bazzite. Now that we have all the prerequisites out of the way, let's get our Bazzite ISO file. We'll visit bazzite.gg and click on the Download Bazzite button. Now we need to complete the wizard to get our ISO file. With regards to hardware, I'm going to select Desktop. The most important question is your GPU. I'm on a modern AMD GPU, so I'm going to select that. For the desktop environment, I'd recommend KDE since it's similar to SteamOS's desktop environment and has a similar workflow to Windows. I prefer the desktop experience to game mode, but if you want game mode, be sure to select yes. Next, we'll download the ISO. The default option is the new Bazzite Live ISO. If the download keeps failing, try using a download manager such as Matrix or Free Download Manager. Now that the download is complete, it's a good idea to verify that the checksum matches the one shown next to the download button. I have a separate video that covers this. Have a look in the top right hand corner of the video for the link. Next up, we need to write our ISO file to our USB drive. In this video, we're going to use Fedora Media Writer, but you can use Rufus or Etcher if you prefer. Note that Ventoy is not supported. First, we need to download Fedora Media Writer. If we visit the Fedora download page, and we scroll down a bit, we can see the link for downloading Fedora Media Writer. The download link will take us to GitHub, where we need to download the Win64 version. Now let's install Fedora Media Writer. If you get an error about a missing DLL when launching Fedora Media Writer, you'll need to install the latest version of Microsoft Visual C++. I'm going to do that quickly. Let's try opening Fedora Media Writer again. Select the ISO file option and click on Next. Then let's choose our Bazzite ISO file. And we select our USB flash drive. Then we click on the Write option. You'll get a warning that everything on the USB drive will be erased. Click Write again to confirm. This process can take 10 to 15 minutes to complete. While Fedora Media Writer is busy, we'll continue with the rest of the guide. Windows Fast Startup can lock hardware devices in a state where they don't function properly on other operating systems, so we need to turn it off. Open the control panel. Click on Hardware and Sound. Click on Change what the power buttons do, and here you need to untick Fast Startup. Typically, I also disable hibernation as it can cause the same issues and may prevent us from shrinking our Windows partition in the next step. Don't forget to click on Save Changes when you're done. Next, we need to make space for Bazzite at the end of the drive. To do this, right-click on the Windows button and select Disk Management. Something important to note, if you don't see an EFI system partition, you'll run into issues during the Bazzite installation. If you have this scenario, you'll need to reinstall Windows with CSM Legacy Boot disabled. Now my drive is more than 2 TB in size. There's an issue in the Fedora installer that Bazzite uses where you'll run into problems if you try and create partitions beyond the 2 TB mark. So we're going to shrink our drive so Windows stays under 2 TB to avoid this issue. At this point, Fedora Media Writer should be complete. Click on Finish, close Fedora Media Writer, and restart the computer to continue. Now we need to open the BIOS boot menu. Typically, you'll need to press Escape during boot, but it's different for every manufacturer. Check online if pressing Escape doesn't work for you. When you're in the BIOS boot menu, select the USB drive. Make sure that it has UEFI in the name. If not, you're booting the ISO via CSM Legacy Boot, which you do not want to do. Once you reach the grub menu, you have two options, Bazzite Live ISO and the Live ISO with basic graphics mode. If you're on an NVIDIA GPU or have issues with the default option, try the basic graphics mode option instead. It can take a while for the desktop to appear. Now that we're on the desktop, select Install Bazzite. We get a warning about BitLocker, but we're going to continue as I haven't had it impact any of my installs. Now select your language and keyboard layout. Select your date and time zone. If you have more than one drive, make sure that you select the right one. Since we already made space for Bazzite, we don't need to reclaim space. Just click Next. I've seen some reports of encryption not working with the new installer, so I'm going to leave encryption off. Next, we create a username and password. Don't tick Enable Root Account, it's not needed. On the summary screen, a lot of people get confused about the Btrfs partition. Our drive is only 3 TB in size, yet we're seeing almost 6 TB listed here. This is because it's showing the same partition multiple times due to the 3 Btrfs subvolumes. Click Install to start the installation. Depending on your hardware, this install can take 10 to 30 minutes to complete. The second step, which we're currently on, takes the longest. At the end of the install, we get a pop-up with a link telling us how to enroll the Bazzite Secure Boot key. Click on OK to complete the installation. Now that the install is complete, when we reboot, we should see a blue Secure Boot mock screen. You might not see the screen if you've installed Bazzite on this machine before. But for a fresh installation, you need to enroll the Bazzite Secure Boot key. Select Enroll Mock, select Continue, select Yes to enroll the key. When it asks for a password, type universal blue. Note that nothing will appear on the screen as you type. This is normal for password entry. Also note that the screen uses a US keyboard layout. If you're using a different layout, you'll need to type the password as if you had a US keyboard. Check the top left corner of the screen for alternative passwords listed for other keyboard layouts. Once the key is enrolled, select Reboot to restart the system. On the first boot, Bazzite performs some initial configuration that can take 5 to 10 minutes to complete. Once it's finished, it will reboot again and you'll see the login screen. Log in with the username and password you set during the installation. Next, you might want to change the default boot order depending on what system you want to use primarily. If you want Bazzite to boot by default, go into your BIOS, which will look very different from mine, and find the Change Boot Order option. It might also be labeled Hard Drive BBS Priority. Make sure that Fedora is the first device in the list. If you want Windows to boot by default, make that the first item instead. To boot the other operating system once off manually, press Escape during your boot, or whatever your manufacturer's boot key is, to open the BIOS boot menu. Then select Fedora to boot Bazzite or Windows Boot Manager to boot Windows. Now that our installation is complete, let's go through some tips. If you want shortcuts to boot Bazzite from Windows, or a Steam shortcut to boot Windows from Bazzite, I cover that in another video. See the link in the top right corner. If you happen to miss the Secure Boot mock screen, you'll see this error. Bad Shim signature, you need to load the kernel first. To fix this, boot into the Live ISO again and open the terminal and run just enroll secure boot key. Then reboot the machine and you should get to the Secure Boot mock screen. Note that you shouldn't need to disable Secure Boot to fix this. Lastly, we want to restore our USB drive to a normal storage device. To do this, we'll install Fedora Media Writer again. Since we're in Bazzite, open the Bazaar store, search for Fedora Media Writer, and install it. Open Fedora Media Writer, select the Restore option, select Next, and click on Restore. It will ask you for your password. Fill in your password and wait for the process to complete. Your USB flash drive is back to a usable storage device again. And that's it. You should now have Bazzite installed alongside of Windows in a dual boot setup. The new Live installer is a big improvement. It's cleaner, faster, and much easier to navigate than the old installer. If you run into any issues, the Bazzite Discord community is incredibly helpful, and I do try and help out in my video comment section too. If this guide helped you out, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel. If you want to see more Linux and Bazzite content, hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.